Hi guys, this is Lane Johnson coming back to you with the chapter 2, starting a journey of reflection so true healing can begin. So as I left off in the last chapter, it was talking about coming out denial, and at the end of the chapter, I had to begin to really take a stock of who I was and who I had become. So starting with chapter 2, talking about starting a journey of reflection so true healing could begin. So one of the things how I began the chapter has to do with as I began the journey to healing, my mind was clouded with years of memory of the type of woman I had thought I was prior to marriage, the type of woman I believe I had been prior to engaging in my marital relationship. I talk about how I was a person that I believed I set goals. I had a goal in terms of I wanted to finish college. I wanted to graduate from college at a certain level. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I actually wanted to own a business. It was like several goals I had for myself prior to my marriage. So, as far as completing college, yes, I was in the corporate arena trying to climb the corporate ladder. So, I believe I had pretty much goals as to what I was trying to achieve in my life. But one of the areas I realized that I did not have a goal was in my actual goal as to the type of man that I wanted to marry. So, in other words, I never sat down and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a man that has this characteristic. I'm looking for a man that has that characteristic. I'm hoping to be in a relationship that fulfills this need. I'm hoping to have maybe a spouse that has certain financial aspects or whatever." At the time, I just pretty much had no idea of what I was looking for. So, what I talk about in chapter 2 is actually the things I really wanted to focus on in this video is pretty much talking about what caused me to make the decisions I made. If I quote unquote believed that I was a certain type of woman, why wasn't these characteristics present when I was choosing my mate? So one of the things what I really want to talk about is four attributes of why I believe I made these decisions at the time. So I wanted to say some of the questions I ended up asking myself. I examined myself. I had to ask myself some hard questions. What was lacking with me that I would marry a man such as this? Was I so desperate for male attention that I would marry the first man who asked? Why didn't I take the time to find out his background or about his family background? Something I learned during this time is sometimes as women or even people in general, we may fail to look at the family dynamics of the person we're trying to date, the person we're trying to marry. So, for instance, the way they treat their mother, the way they treat their grandparents, the way they interact with other people. Those are clear signs of what type of person this is. So say if you can't treat your mother right, your dynamics with your mother is not right. Chances are, how could you treat your wife the way God ordained? How could you love a woman the way she's meant to be loved if you can't even love your own mother? So, just taking a look at some of these questions and what internal hunger did this relationship fulfill? What was lacking in me that I would marry the first guy who asked me? So, as I alluded to earlier, I actually think it was four contributing factors. There could be more, but during this season of my life, I basically identified what I considered to be four factors. So the first factor I actually talk about is growing up in a household that was pretty much run by like a single parent, which was my mother. So some of the points I wanted to talk about in this book about growing up in a single household with a mother. It says I basically witnessed as a adolescent, I witnessed as a teen, and even I witnessed as an adult my mother own relational failure. So say my mother pretty much had relationship throughout my as I was growing up, but in my opinion, she was in a relationship with men I felt, in my opinion, who never really measured up. They never measured up to what um, a woman should pretty much seek in a relationship. So here, I'm an adolescent, I'm a teen, I'm a young woman, and I'm watching my own mother in these relationships, and she's exemplifying to me. And it's not even to judge her, because maybe at the time she didn't even know what a real relationship was. So I'm looking at my mother struggling in these relationships with men that are, some of them actually were of no character. They may have had professions, they may have had job, they may have been um, just had things that women would think on the surface were of value, but when you got to the heart of the matter, a lot of these men really didn't measure up. So here I'm watching my mom and I'm seeing her in these relationships, and in my mind I'm saying, well, okay, this is, I mean, I think it's dysfunctional, but at the end of the day, this is what's being modeled to me as a relationship. So that's one of the first factors I talk about when I think about what caused you to do the things that you were doing. Like, where did your mentality come from? How did you end up here at the end of the day? So the second attribute I wanted to talk about has to do with, it still relates to being growing up in a single family home, but it's more so looking at the fact of not having a male role model. And one of the things I talk about in this book or whatever, in this chapter, is I remember even at the, most people may think you may not have memories at the age of 3, but I can recall vividly the day my father pretty much left our family. He decided that, almost similar to my situation, he basically didn't want to be married anymore to my mother. He didn't want to deal with the responsibilities that entail being married to my mother. But the only difference between our situation was the fact that my mother didn't just have 2 children, she had 5 children to care for. So here's my dad, he's deciding, I don't want to be married to you. I'm sitting here witnessing this guy basically walk out on a family. And not only did he just walk out on a family, he actually walked out and never turned back around. So my only other memory other than at the age of 3 of my father was pretty much him calling. I believe I was in the 4th grade at that time, and that was the last time I've ever heard from my father. His mother and his brothers and sisters, they may have lived a few blocks from where I grew up and where my family home is to this day. But every time you pretty much would go see them, nobody had any idea where my father was. Oh, I don't know where he is. I don't, he's gone basically. Nobody, quote unquote, knows where he's at. So when I think about the fact of just growing up without a male role model in the house and witnessing my own mother's relational failures, I believe that my father had abandoned my mother when I was 3 years old. I felt that my family had been taken advantage of because of the lack of a father figure. I remember times that not one of my aunts would always talk about this life we would have had my father remained with the family. So to me, this had pretty much sparked a desire. I had a desire to have that male dominant figure. I had a desire to have that person that was basically, quote unquote, the head of the house, that was able to domineer, was able to be the leader, was able to direct the household. So one of the things I felt like, this longing to have this strong male figure remained dormant until my college years. I would meet, in my opinion, men along the way who never filled this empty place. So it felt like when James came along in my life, I had finally met that what I was seeking, unbeknownst to myself. In him, I would have this guy that was pretty much, he was domineering, he was forceful, he knew what he didn't want, and he was quick to tell you that or whatever. He was really dominant. And one of the things I say in the book, it says, I have found the father I sought. Because at times, James treated me more like his child than his wife. So, I mean, I could laugh at that at the time, but, when I was going through the scenario, I was actually too ignorant to see what was happening right in front of my face. So I believe this dormant desire manifested itself in terms of the man I eventually married. He was that quote unquote father figure because a lot of times he actually was real bossy. He actually tried to control my life. He actually tried to tell me how to live at times. And even at times, I didn't write this in the book. He actually would tell me how my hair should be. He would tell me what clothes he didn't like, or just different things like that. And I even remember one instance where I actually lost weight, and he decided that he didn't want me to be skinny. So in other words, he was that dominant figure. He was controlling at the end of the day. So the next factor, which is the third factor, I believe that contribute to this was to gain the respect of my peers. Growing up, I grew up in an environment where you were judged more so by who you were dating. It's like the question such as how are things going in school was never asked, other than maybe a few of my relatives, such as my uncle. So, say if you're looking to go to college and you're not in a relationship, the environment was basically calling you, hey, I've heard several times such a thing, such as, oh, the nerd. Like, I was a nerd because I didn't decide to be in a relationship with just some random guy. I was a nerd because I just didn't decide to give my body out randomly to people that, quote unquote, that allowed me to be into a relationship. And one of the other incidents I remember growing up at this time was I felt as though you were judged more by who you were lying next to more than your brains, your grades, your pursuing a degree, trying to be probably the second or third person in your family that goes on to college. People didn't really want to see that. They wanted to know who you were dating. And I also remember one of my relatives, one of her favorite questions was, oh, who you dating? And say if you say, oh, well, I'm not dating right now. I'm trying to focus on school. I'm trying to do this and that. The next response was always, what, you a lesbian? Like, she would always, like, anytime I would see her, that was her favorite question. Are you a lesbian? Are you gay? Like, she couldn't comprehend anything other than being in a relationship. So the third factor, again, was just to silence the mouths of these naysayers. So it felt as though once I was in a relationship with James, once, you know, I was doing what was quote unquote normal to other people, then I became acceptable. You're able to flow with your peers. You're able to gain acceptance with certain members of your family. Quote unquote, you're now normal. You're in a steady relationship. We can relate to you now. We can't relate to the college aspect. We can't relate to the trying to go to the corporate arena. We can't relate to any of that. But yeah, we can relate to you having a steady relationship. We can relate to you having maybe a man in your bed, or not even in your bed at the time, but a man in your relationship. That's all we can relate to. College, that doesn't equate. None of that equate. So basically, I felt like looking back that even when James came along, and I may have thought about some of the other men I dated, or I actually dated along the way, but it was usually men that maybe I was more interested in, or at the time they may have been more interested in me. I had a joke in my mind. I always felt as though that the men that was totally interested into me at this time were either those that's looking for their next sexual conquest, or it was those looking for, they were addicted to the latest drugs of the day. So that was my perception at this time. And what I like to leave that this chapter was said, it said, once I found myself in a steady relationship, it silenced the mouths of the naysayers and name callers. It appeared that I had finally gained the respect of those around me. The standard that others used to judge me were met once James and I were in a steady relationship. I was certainly a part of the right crowd. No longer would I have to endure the inquisitive looks or sideways glances. I was finally part of the crowd. And I even described this, I know you may have heard the term before called approval addiction, but this was part of approval addiction. You're in a relationship. You don't have to worry about people questioning you. Your family won't question why you're not in a relationship. Your peers going to accept you as normal, that you're finally in a relationship. And not only are you in a relationship, you're in a relationship with someone who appears to be mutually interested in you as well. So that was the third point, trying to gain a respect of the peers. The final point that I talk about in this chapter has to do with, and to me, this is the most important part. It was like, I believe that my decision to date James had to do with my own emotional deficiency. So, what I define deficiency is based on taking it out of the dictionary. It has to do with incompleteness, defectiveness, insufficiency, lacking an essential quality or element. So, I felt that one of the qualities that I was lacking at this time, I talk about growing up as a middle child. So here I am, I got four sisters, so it's five girls in total. Here you are, you're in the middle, you're smack dab in the middle, so you're not the youngest, you're not the oldest. So at the end of the day, being a middle child, quote unquote, you're the overlooked one. So here I'm the middle child. I had these sisters. I'm looking at them. I'm loving them. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at them like, oh, wow, you're smarter than me. You're prettier. You have more friends. You're thinner. I'm looking at my sisters and I'm saying, hey, gosh, you got friends. You have boyfriends that's interested in you. What's missing in me? Why am I not getting those things you guys have? And it's not even against my sisters, really. It's looking at myself and saying, hey, yeah, you're missing something. There's something wrong with you at the end of the day. You're not measuring up to your sisters. You're not measuring up to, even just something as simple as forming just a simple friendship. You're not measuring up. So during this period, it seemed that everyone was either prettier or more popular. Inwardly, I wish that I could change everything about myself. So again, as a result of my low self-image, I felt that others, particularly men, measured me by the same standard. This would lead to what I believe was the inability to form lasting male and female relationship. So what I believe at this period of time is this. What you're giving out is what you're going to get back. So you're out in the universe, you're out in this world, you're incomplete, you're insufficient, you have low self-esteem. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get somebody that's able to feed on that inconsistency inside yourself. You don't know your value? Hey, I don't know your value either. You're insecure? Hey, I'm going to use that insecurity to my advantage. You don't know who you are? Hey, I don't know who you are either. You don't have it together? On the outside, yeah, you're looking good. Your suit's nice. Your hair done at the time. You're cute. You got a car. You got this and that. But under the surface, I see your insufficiency. I see you don't have any value in who you are. You don't know who you are. So if you don't know who you are, how I'm going to know who you are? So to me, like, I blame my own, when I weigh all the factors. Of course, you could come from a single family home. You could have a lack of a father figure. You could do this and you could do that. But at the end of the day, how do you perceive yourself? Do you know your own value? Do you know that you're fearfully and wonderfully made? Do you know that even with the mistakes and the hurts and the pain of which you didn't have, that God loves you? Do you know I've called you out of darkness into my light? Do you know that your name actually means light? Do you know that you're just beautiful? And do you know that I love you? Do you know that you even love yourself? So I just thought that my own deficiency was really a contributing factor to making this wrong choice. So I go on to talk about how by the time Jane came along, I thought that all these issues had been resolved within myself, my own insufficiencies, my lacks, my dislikes, my hatred of partially of who I was. I thought that these had all been resolved. I believe that I was a complete individual who had overcome all internal obstacles. But when I look back over this chapter and I look back over my life and I look back over where I was in that place, it says in actuality I was an incomplete individual who needed to discover who I was. As one of my relatives had a funny way of saying, you have plenty of book sense, but you have no common sense. So when at the time I didn't appreciate it, but now that I'm an adult, looking back, I actually do believe I can use one aspect of what they were saying. Pretty much they're saying, okay, yeah, you're getting the book knowledge, you're getting this, but get common sense. Come to know who you are. Evaluate where you are, what you're looking for. When you're in a relationship, are you whole? Are you looking for somebody to complete you, or are you looking for somebody to add to you? What are the characteristics that you're bringing to the table? Are you bringing your insecurities? Are you bringing your brokenness? Are you bringing your lack of sufficiency to the table? One scripture in the Bible a lot of people like to quote is about the Proverbs 31 woman. And in my opinion, what the Proverbs 31 woman is, it's a woman that at the end of the day, I know who I am. At the end of the day, I know what I'm bringing to the table. At the end of the day, I'm the prize. At the end of the day, when you get me, I'm complete. I do have flaws, but I'm going to add to your life. And what I expect from you is for you to add to my life. I don't expect you to divide. I don't expect you to empty out my bank account. I don't expect you to empty out my heart. I don't expect this and that. I expect you to add to my life, because guess what? When you get me as a Proverbs 31 woman, or as a woman that's whole, you're getting the best that I have to offer. So one of the things I would encourage anyone listening to this book or reading this book, know who you are. Know who you are before you decide to a relationship finds you or you find a relationship. Know first of all who you are. Know second of all what you're seeking. Third of all, you definitely need to know what your goals and aspirations are even within your relationship. So again, this is Lane Johnson, and I'm just trying to encourage you to really begin a journey of true healing. And in my opinion, true healing starts with what? What does true healing start with? Taking inventory of yourself. So to you all, until we get to the other side of chapter 3, I enjoyed talking to you, and I hope to see you again. Have a great day.